The sky over Corinth 9 burned red with smoke and plasma fire. Explosions shook the ground every few seconds. Tae-sung pressed himself against a broken wall, his medical bag heavy on his shoulder. His hands shook as he injected another wounded soldier with pain medication. The young private screamed despite the drugs. A piece of shrapnel had torn through his leg. "You'll be okay," Tae-sung said, though he wasn't sure if that was true. He wrapped the wound quickly and moved to the next soldier. There were always more wounded, always more screaming. The battle had been going on for 6 hours. The Vorneth swarm came in waves, like locusts made of metal and hate. They didn't negotiate, they didn't retreat. They just consumed everything in their path. Humans and Krell fought side by side today because the Vorneth were everyone's enemy. Tae-sung had seen the Krell warriors up close for the first time today. They were massive, standing over 8 feet tall. Their scales were thick like armor, colored deep purple and black. Each Krell had 4 arms, all of them strong enough to tear metal. They fought with a fury that made even experienced human soldiers step back in respect. One Krell warrior stood out above all the others. Commander Rexthar led from the front, his dual blades spinning in all 4 hands. He moved like a storm, cutting through Vorneth machines with precision and power. Human soldiers cheered when they saw him charge. The Krell followed their commander without hesitation, smashing through enemy lines. Tae-sung watched Rexthar lead a counterattack toward the Vorneth artillery position. The commander's voice boomed across the battlefield, speaking in the Krell language. Even without understanding the words, Tae-sung could hear the command in that voice, the authority, the absolute confidence. Then everything went wrong. A Vorneth spike launcher hidden in the rubble fired at close range. 3 spikes shot out, each one as long as a man's arm. 2 missed. The third one hit Rexthar directly in his lower back. The spike punched through his armor and buried itself deep in his spine. The massive Krell warrior stopped mid-charge. His blades fell from his lower 2 hands. His legs buckled. Commander Rexthar crashed to the ground like a falling tree. The sound of his body hitting the dirt carried across the battlefield. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The Krell warriors nearest to their commander froze. Then they roared with rage and threw themselves at the Vorneth position with renewed violence. They destroyed the spike launcher and everything around it. The enemy artillery fell silent, but Commander Rexthar did not get up. Tae-sung saw other Krell warriors rush to their fallen commander. They formed a protective circle around him, fighting off any Vorneth that came close. The human forces pushed forward as well, driving the enemy back. Slowly, the Vorneth began to retreat. The tide of battle turned. Captain Hyun-sik's voice crackled over the radio. "All units, prepare for evacuation. Transports incoming. We hold this position for 10 more minutes, then we pull back. Acknowledge." Tae-sung pressed his radio. "Medical unit acknowledges. We have 30 wounded who need immediate evac." "Understood. Get them ready to move." The next 10 minutes were chaos. Tae-sung and the other medics worked frantically to stabilize wounded soldiers for transport. The heavy transport ships came down through the smoke, their engines roaring. Soldiers began loading the wounded onto stretchers and carrying them to the ships. Tae-sung kept looking over at the Krell position. He could see Rexthar lying on the ground, surrounded by his warriors. The commander's upper arms moved. He was still alive, but his legs remained motionless. The Krell's second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Vormak, knelt beside Rexthar. Tae-sung couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could see the body language. Rexthar's upper arms gestured angrily. Vormak's head lowered. Other Krell warriors turned away. Then, Vormak stood. He pulled Rexthar's ceremonial blade from the commander's belt and placed it on the ground beside him. He made a gesture with all 4 arms, something that looked like a salute or a prayer. Then he turned and walked toward the Krell transport ship. The other Krell warriors followed him. They were leaving their commander behind. Tae Sung stared in disbelief. He grabbed the arm of a human lieutenant who had worked with the Krell before. What are they doing? Why aren't they taking Rexthar with them? The lieutenant's face was grim. Krell culture. A warrior who can't walk can't fight. A warrior who can't fight has no honor. They're leaving him to die in battle. They think it's merciful. That's insane. He's still alive. It's their way, medic, not our business. The lieutenant pulled away and headed for the transport. Tae Sung watched the Krell ships lift off. He watched the human transports loading the last of the wounded. Captain Hyun-sik was waving soldiers aboard. Come on, people. We have 2 minutes before the Vorneth regroup. Tae Sung looked at the Krell position. Rexthar was alone now, lying in the dirt. His upper arms moved slowly, as if testing their strength. His legs stayed still. The massive warrior turned his head and looked across the battlefield. Even from this distance, Tae Sung could see the resignation in that alien face. Rexthar was waiting to die. Medic Tae Sung! Get on the transport now! Captain Hyun-sik's voice was sharp. That's an order! Tae Sung's feet moved toward the transport. His training said to obey. His exhaustion said to save himself. Every logical part of his brain said that Rexthar was an alien warrior from a species they barely understood. Maybe the Krell way was right for the Krell. Maybe it wasn't his place to interfere. But his hands remembered wrapping wounds. His heart remembered every soldier he'd saved and every soldier he'd lost. His sister Jiwoo's voice echoed in his memory from their last video call before deployment. All life is precious, little brother. Don't forget that out there. Tae Sung stopped walking toward the transport. He turned around. Rexthar lay alone in the killing field, abandoned by his own people. A warrior who had led from the front, who had saved countless lives today, left to die because his culture valued walking over living. No, Tae Sung said quietly. He started running toward Rexthar. Behind him, Captain Hyun-sik shouted his name. The transport engines grew louder. Soldiers yelled at him to come back. Tae Sung ignored all of it. His boots pounded against the broken ground. His medical bag bounced against his back. His lungs burned. Rexthar saw him coming. The Krell commander's eyes widened in confusion. One of his upper arms reached for the blade beside him as if preparing to defend himself or to die fighting. Tae Sung slid to his knees beside the massive alien. Up close, Rexthar was even larger than he'd seemed from a distance. Each of his arms was thicker than Tae Sung's torso. His scaled face showed pain and something else. Surprise, maybe. Or suspicion. I'm a medic, Tae Sung said, knowing the translator in his radio would convert his words. I'm going to help you. Rexthar's voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. I am abandoned. This is proper. Leave. Not happening. Tae Sung opened his medical bag and pulled out a scanner. He ran it over Rexthar's spine and checked the readings. His heart sank. The damage was severe. The spike had severed major neural pathways. Without serious medical equipment, Rexthar's legs would never work again. But he could keep him alive. In the distance, Tae Sung heard the transport engines powering up for takeoff. He heard Captain Hyun-sik's final call over the radio. Medic Tae Sung, you are disobeying a direct order. Return immediately or you will be left behind. Tae Sung pulled out his emergency trauma kit and began injecting Rexthar with stabilizing nanites. Sorry, Captain. I can't do that. The transport lifted off without him. Tae Sung watched it disappear into the red smoke. Then he looked at the massive, paralyzed alien warrior in front of him and the empty battlefield around them. He had no idea how to get them both out of here alive, but he knew he couldn't have lived with himself if he'd left Rexthar to die alone. Okay, Tae Sung said, more to himself than to Rexthar. First, we stop the bleeding. Then we figure out how to move you. Then we find shelter before the Vorneth come back. Rexthar stared at him with unreadable alien eyes. Why? Tae-sung didn't have a good answer, so he just told the truth. Because you're hurt, and I'm a medic. That's enough. The battlefield was quiet now, too quiet. Tae-sung worked quickly, his hands steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. He injected Rexthar with medical nanites designed to stabilize trauma patients. The tiny machines would keep the Krell's major systems functioning, but they couldn't repair the spine damage. That would need surgery, equipment, things Tae-sung didn't have. Rexthar watched him work with suspicious eyes. The alien's upper arms tensed, as if he expected an attack. You will take my weapons, my armor? No. Tae-sung checked the wound site. The spike had gone deep, but missed the major blood vessels by millimeters. Lucky. I'm going to get you somewhere safe. There is no safe. The swarm returns. You should have gone with your pack. Probably. Tae-sung looked around the battlefield. Broken equipment was scattered everywhere, destroyed Vorneth machines, damaged vehicles. Then he saw it. A section of Krell armor plating attached to a powered servo frame. It was part of a mobile shield generator that had been blown apart. An idea formed in his mind. A crazy, desperate idea. He stood and ran to the wreckage. The servo frame was designed to move heavy Krell equipment. If he could detach it from the broken generator and reattach it to something flat, he could make a powered sled. Maybe. Possibly. If nothing exploded. Tae-sung pulled tools from his pack and started working. His hands shook from exhaustion and adrenaline. He disconnected power cells, rerouted wiring, and prayed to whatever gods might be listening that he wouldn't electrocute himself. Behind him, he heard Rexthar moving. The sound of scales on dirt. He glanced back. Rexthar had dragged himself a few meters using his upper arms. The Krell commander was incredibly strong, even paralyzed, but dragging his massive body across kilometers of terrain would be impossible. What are you doing, human? Rexthar's voice carried across the empty battlefield. Building you a ride. Tae-sung stripped plating from a destroyed transport and laid it flat. He attached the servo frame underneath. The power cells were at half charge. Not great, but enough. He hoped. 15 minutes later, he had something that looked like a sled that a cargo hauler might use. It hovered about 6 inches off the ground when he activated it. The controls were simple. Forward, back, left, right. The servo frame whined, but held steady. Tae-sung guided the sled over to Rexthar. Can you pull yourself onto this? Rexthar stared at the makeshift device. Something that might have been respect crossed his alien features. You built this? For me? Yeah. Now get on before the Vorneth come back. Rexthar used all 4 of his upper arms to drag his body onto the sled. It took several minutes. The Krell was incredibly heavy. The servo frame groaned under his weight but held. Tae-sung strapped him down with cables to keep him stable. Where do we go? Rexthar asked. Good question. Tae-sung pulled out his tactical map. Most of the human positions were evacuated. The Krell had pulled back completely. But there was something on the map, a marker he'd placed 3 days ago during a recon mission, an abandoned mining facility about 8 kilometers northwest. It had been empty when he'd scouted it. Sealed doors, intact structure. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. There's an old mining facility northwest of here. We can hide there until I can call for rescue. Your people will not come for me. My people will not come for either of us. We'll see. Tae-sung activated the sled and started walking. The servo frame hummed, following his guidance. It moved slowly, about the speed of a walking pace. 8 kilometers would take them hours. The sun was already setting. They moved across the battlefield in silence. Tae-sung kept checking his scanner for Vorneth activity. So far, nothing. The enemy had pulled back after their defeat, probably regrouping for another push tomorrow. That gave them time. Not much, but some. Rexthar spoke after the first hour of travel. What is your designation, human? Tae-sung, Private First Class, Combat Medic. I am Commander Rexthar of the 3rd Krell War Host. He paused. I was Commander. Now I am nothing. You're still alive. That's something. For my people, to live without honor is worse than death. You have saved me from an honorable end. Why? Tae-sung didn't have a good answer. How could he explain it? That he'd been raised by his sister after their parents died? That Ji-woo had become a botanist because she believed all life was precious? That she'd made him promise to come home, to not become hard and cold like some soldiers did? That somewhere in his heart, he still believed life mattered more than rules? Because it was the right thing to do, he finally said. Rexthar was quiet for a long time. Then he said something in his own language. The translator didn't catch it, but it sounded like a prayer or a curse. Maybe both. Night fell. The temperature dropped. Tae-sung's breath came out in clouds of steam. His legs ached. His wounded shoulder throbbed. But he kept walking, one step after another. The sled followed behind him, carrying the massive alien warrior who should have been dead. They reached the mining facility at midnight. The building was exactly as Tae-sung remembered. Old but intact. A relic from when humans first tried to colonize Corinth 9, before the Vorneth came. The main door was sealed, but Tae-sung's override code still worked. The door hissed open. He guided the sled inside. The interior was dark and dusty but secure. He found the power generator and coaxed it to life. Lights flickered on, revealing a large storage area with offices on the upper level. There were even old bunks in what used to be crew quarters. It smelled stale, but it was shelter. Tae-sung helped Rexthar move from the sled to one of the larger cargo platforms. It would serve as a bed. He checked the Krell's vital signs. Stable. The nanites were doing their job. Water, Rexthar said. His voice was weaker now. Tae-sung found the facility's water recycler and managed to get it running. The water tasted metallic but safe. He filled a container and brought it to Rexthar. The alien drank deeply, using 2 of his hands to hold the large container. You need food, too, Tae-sung said. What do Krell eat? Protein, high density. Rexthar looked at him. You have no food for my kind. Tae-sung checked his own supplies. 3 days of rations, maybe 4 if he stretched them. All human food. He had no idea if it would even be safe for a Krell to eat. I'll figure something out. He found an old emergency supply locker. Inside were expired nutrient bars from the mining days. He checked the ingredients, mostly protein paste with synthetic vitamins. He brought one to Rexthar. Can you eat this? Rexthar sniffed it with his flat nose. He took a small bite, chewed carefully. After a moment, he nodded. It is acceptable. They ate in silence. Tae-sung rationed his own food carefully. He didn't know how long they'd be trapped here. His radio couldn't reach far enough to contact command. The facility's communications array was damaged beyond his ability to repair. After eating, Rexthar lay back on the platform. His eyes closed. For a moment, Tae-sung thought he'd fallen asleep. Then the Krell spoke. You have made a mistake, Tae-sung. Probably made several today. You disobeyed your commander. You abandoned your evacuation. You stayed with an enemy warrior. Your people will punish you for this. Maybe. Tae-sung pulled out a thermal blanket from his pack and spread it over Rexthar. The Krell was cold-blooded. He'd need warmth. But I'd punish myself worse if I'd left you to die. Rexthar opened his eyes and looked at the human. Really looked at him. This small creature who was a third his size, who had risked everything to save him. I do not understand your kind. That's okay. I don't always understand us either. Tae-sung found a spot against the wall and sat down. His body screamed with exhaustion. "Get some rest, Commander. Tomorrow we'll figure out our next move." "I am not Commander. Not anymore. You're still alive, which means you're still something. We'll figure out what that is later." Outside, the wind howled against the facility walls. In the distance, something exploded. The war continued without them. But inside the abandoned mining facility, a human medic and a paralyzed alien warrior rested together. Unlikely allies in a hostile world. Tae-sung's last thought before sleep took him was of his sister's face. Ji-woo would probably say he did the right thing. She always believed in choosing compassion over convenience. He hoped he'd get the chance to tell her about this, if they survived. Rexthar's breathing slowed to a steady rhythm. The massive warrior slept, guarded by a human who had no logical reason to protect him. But logic had nothing to do with it. Sometimes the right choice was simply the human one. The facility's lights hummed quietly in the darkness. For now, they were safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, neither of them died alone on a battlefield. And somehow, that felt like a victory. The first week was the hardest. Tae-sung woke on the second day to find Rexthar trying to drag himself across the floor using his upper arms. The Krell's face twisted with pain and frustration. He was trying to reach his ceremonial blade, which Tae-sung had placed on a high shelf for safety. "What are you doing?" Tae-sung rushed over. "Give me my blade," Rexthar growled. All four of his arms tensed. "I will end this properly. You should not have interfered with my honorable death. Now I am trapped in this broken body. I am shame to my family. Give me the blade." Tae-sung crossed his arms. "No." "Human!" Rexthar's voice shook the room. "You do not understand. A Krell warrior without legs is not a warrior. I am nothing. I dishonor my mate Kala. I dishonor my offspring. Every moment I live in this state brings shame to their names. The blade is mercy." "The blade is giving up." Tae-sung sat down near Rexthar, but not too close. The alien was still dangerous, paralyzed or not. "You're alive. That means something." "It means nothing!" Rexthar slammed one fist against the floor, cracking the concrete. "You cannot understand. In Krell culture, the war pack is everything. The strong protect the weak. A warrior who cannot walk, cannot protect, cannot fight, cannot contribute. It is better to die with honor than live as burden." "That's stupid." Rexthar's eyes widened. Tae-sung realized he'd probably just insulted the alien's entire civilization. But he was too tired and stressed to care. "I mean it. You have 4 arms. You have your brain. You have experience and knowledge. Just because your legs don't work doesn't mean you're worthless. You are young and foolish. Maybe. But I'm the young fool who's keeping you alive, so deal with it." Tae-sung stood and checked their food supplies. 3 days left at current rationing. Water was okay. The recycler worked well enough, but they needed a plan. Rexthar was silent for the rest of the day. He refused food, refused water. He lay on his platform and stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. Tae-sung forced himself not to argue further. Sometimes people needed time to process their situation. He'd seen it with wounded soldiers before. The anger, the bargaining, the depression, but he kept the blade on the high shelf. On the 3rd day, Tae-sung found an old communications relay in one of the storage rooms. It was broken, but maybe he could fix it. He wasn't an engineer, but he'd picked up some technical skills in the field. He spread the parts across a workbench and started studying them. Rexthar watched from his platform. "What are you doing?" "Trying to fix this comm relay. If I can get it working, we can send a distress signal. No one will come for me. They'll come for me. And when they come for me, they get you too. Package deal." Rexthar made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. "Your people will not want to retrieve a broken Krell warrior. Then they'll have to deal with me being annoying about it. Tae-sung connected two components and got a small spark. Progress. I'm very good at being annoying when I want to be. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Tae-sung worked on the comm relay. Rexthar watched and occasionally offered observations. The Krell had extensive knowledge of technology. His people were warriors, but they weren't stupid. They'd developed advanced weapons and armor. Rexthar understood energy systems better than Tae-sung did. That power coupling is reversed, Rexthar said on the 5th day. Tae-sung looked at where he was pointing. Are you sure? Yes. Krell ships use similar systems. Reverse it. Tae-sung reversed the coupling. The relay hummed to life for 3 seconds before dying again, but it was more progress than he'd made in days. How do you know so much about this stuff? I commanded a war host. I must understand the weapons and systems my warriors use. A commander who relies only on others for knowledge is a weak commander. Rexthar paused. I was not weak. You're not weak now either. Rexthar didn't respond to that, but Tae-sung noticed he'd eaten his rations that morning. Small progress. On the 7th day, the Vorneth came. Tae-sung was working on the relay when the perimeter alarms he'd rigged started blaring. He ran to the security monitors. His blood went cold. 3 Vorneth scouts were approaching the facility. The insect-like machines skittered across the ground on multiple legs, their sensors sweeping the area. We have company, Tae-sung called to Rexthar. He grabbed his rifle and checked the charge. Half power. He had 2 spare power cells. Not enough for a sustained fight. Rexthar pulled himself to an upright position. How many? 3 scouts. But if they report our position, more will come. Give me a weapon. Tae-sung hesitated. Rexthar was still technically an allied soldier, but trusting a frustrated alien warrior with weapons felt risky. Then again, they needed all the firepower they could get. He retrieved Rexthar's plasma rifles from storage and brought them over. The Krell checked the weapons with practiced ease, using all 4 arms. Despite his paralyzed legs, his upper body was fully functional. He could aim and fire with precision. Where will they breach? Tae-sung studied the monitors. East entrance. It's the weakest point. Then we defend there. Help me move. Together they managed to get Rexthar positioned behind a barricade of crates facing the east entrance. Tae-sung took a position on the opposite side. They waited. The sound of metal scraping against metal grew louder. The Vorneth were cutting through the door. Why did you save me? Rexthar asked suddenly. What? On the battlefield. You could have escaped, could have lived. Why did you stay? Tae-sung thought about it. My sister Ji-woo. She's a botanist, studies plants. She always said that all life finds a way to survive if given the chance. That every living thing has value, even if we don't understand it at first. I guess I believed her. Your sister is not a warrior. No, but she's smart. And she's right more often than I want to admit. The east door exploded inward. Vorneth scouts poured through, their optical sensors glowing red in the dim light. Tae-sung opened fire. His rifle cracked, sending plasma bolts into the nearest machine. It staggered but kept coming. Rexthar fired with 2 rifles simultaneously, 1 in each upper arm. His lower arm steadied his position and fed ammunition. Despite being unable to stand, his aim was perfect. He hit weak points in the Vorneth armor that Tae-sung didn't even know existed. The machines fell, sparking and twitching. But more came through the breach. Tae-sung ran low on ammunition. He switched to his sidearm, firing carefully to conserve energy. 1 Vorneth machine broke through and charged at him. He rolled aside, and it smashed into the crates behind him. Rexthar roared something in his own language and threw one of his empty rifles at the machine. The heavy weapon hit it with enough force to knock it sideways. Tae-sung used the opening to put 3 shots into its main processor. It collapsed. Then suddenly, it was over. The Vorneth scouts lay destroyed. Smoke filled the air. Tae-sung's ears rang from the weapons fire. He looked at Rexthar. The Krell was breathing heavily but unhurt. All four of his arms still held weapons or used positions steady. Despite his paralysis, he'd fought effectively, protected their position, saved Tae-sung's life at least twice during the fight. "You fought well," Rexthar said. "So did you." Tae-sung reloaded his rifle with his last power cell. "For someone who claims to be useless, you just saved both our lives." Rexthar looked at his hands, at the weapons they held, at the destroyed enemies in front of their position. Something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, maybe, but recognition. He had fought. He had contributed. Even without his legs, he was still dangerous, still valuable. "We must seal this breach," Rexthar said. "More will come." They worked together to weld sheets of metal over the destroyed door. Tae-sung did the physical work while Rexthar directed him, pointing out weak points and suggesting reinforcements. It took hours, but eventually the entrance was secured. That night, they ate their meager rations in silence. Tae-sung noticed that Rexthar no longer stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. The Krell studied their surroundings, analyzing defensive positions, planning contingencies. "Tomorrow we finish the comm relay," Rexthar said. "I know how to boost its signal range. We will need parts from the destroyed Vorneth." "You want to send a distress call now?" "Yes." Rexthar met his eyes. "Because you were right, human. I am still useful, even like this. And I would like to see my mate and offspring again, if they will still accept me." "They will." Tae-sung felt relief wash over him. "When they see what you can still do, they'll understand." "Perhaps, or perhaps not, but I will try, because you gave me the chance to try." Rexthar's voice softened slightly. "You saved my life, Tae-sung. That is a debt I cannot repay. You don't owe me anything. We saved each other today." Rexthar considered this. In his culture, debts and honor were everything. But maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to understand a different perspective. A human perspective. Where saving someone didn't create a debt, it created something else. Friendship. The word was still foreign to him, but he had time to learn it. The comm relay sparked to life on the 14th day. Tae-sung and Rexthar had worked together, combining Vorneth components with the old human equipment. The result was ugly but functional. The signal wouldn't reach far, but it would reach far enough. Probably. "Ready?" Tae-sung asked. Rexthar nodded, all four arms positioned on different control panels. "Send the signal." Tae-sung pressed the activation button. The relay hummed, building power. Then it broadcast their distress call into space. A simple message. Coordinates. Request for immediate extraction. Emergency medical situation. They waited. Hours passed with no response. Tae-sung tried not to feel discouraged. Space was big. Their signal was weak. It might take time. On the 15th day, the relay crackled. A voice came through, distorted but understandable. It was Captain Hyun-sik. "This is Human Coalition vessel Dawn's Edge to unknown signal. Identify yourself." Tae-sung grabbed the transmitter. "Captain, this is Private First Class Tae-sung. I'm at coordinates on Corinth 9. I have wounded and need immediate extraction." There was a long pause. Then Hyun-sik's voice came back, tight with controlled anger. "Tae-sung, you disobeyed direct orders. You abandoned your unit. And now you want rescue?" "Yes, sir. I have a wounded warrior here. Commander Rexthar of the Krell 3rd War Host. He needs medical attention." Another pause. Tae-sung could imagine the conversation happening on the other side. Then a different voice came through. Deeper. Speaking in Krell language. Rexthar's whole body tensed when he heard it. "That is Vormak," Rexthar said quietly. "My second in command. The one who left me." The translator converted Vormak's words. Commander Rexthar is dead. He died with honor on the battlefield. This is some human trick. Rexthar pulled himself to the comm system. He spoke in his own language, his voice carrying authority despite his position on the floor. Tae Sung's translator converted it. I am Rexthar. I am alive, and I am coming home, Vormak, with or without your permission. The comm went silent for a full minute. Then Hyunsik's voice returned. We're sending a joint extraction team, human and Krell. Arrival in 6 hours. Maintain your position. The next 6 hours were the longest of Tae Sung's life. He and Rexthar prepared for extraction, gathering their few possessions. Neither spoke much. Both knew that returning meant facing consequences. Tae Sung had disobeyed orders. Rexthar had violated Krell cultural expectations by surviving. The extraction ship arrived exactly on time. It was a joint human-Krell transport. Tae Sung watched on the monitors as it landed outside the facility. Soldiers disembarked, human soldiers in their armor, weapons ready. Krell warriors, massive and imposing, their scales reflecting the afternoon sun. Tae Sung opened the facility doors and stepped out. He left his weapon inside, a gesture of peace or surrender, maybe both. Captain Hyun-sik approached with 4 soldiers. His face was hard, unreadable. Private Tae Sung, you are under arrest for disobeying orders and abandoning your unit. Yes, sir. Behind Hyun-sik, the Krell warriors entered the facility. Tae Sung heard Rexthar speaking in his own language, heard Vormak's response. He couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Disbelief, anger, confusion. The Krell emerged, carrying Rexthar on a hover stretcher. The massive warrior's paralyzed legs hung limp, but his upper body was alert. His eyes found Tae Sung and held his gaze for a moment. A silent acknowledgement passed between them. They were loaded onto the transport separately, humans with humans, Krell with Krell. Tae Sung sat in the troop compartment, his hands bound. The soldiers around him wouldn't meet his eyes. He'd become something uncomfortable, a reminder that orders and survival didn't always align. The journey back to base took 3 hours. Tae Sung was escorted to a holding cell. It was small but clean. A cot, a sink, a toilet. He sat on the cot and waited. His body ached. His mind replayed the past 2 weeks over and over. Had he made the right choice? Logic said no. Orders said no. Protocol said no, but his conscience said yes. Ji Woo would say yes. And somehow that mattered more than all the rest. 2 days passed. Guards brought food. No one spoke to him. Then, on the 3rd day, Captain Hyun-sik entered his cell with 2 officers Tae Sung didn't recognize. You're being court-martialed, Hyun-sik said without preamble. Formal charges: disobeying direct orders in combat, abandoning your unit, and reckless endangerment. The tribunal convenes tomorrow. You have the right to legal representation. I understand, sir. Hyun-sik's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Tae Sung, I don't agree with what you did. But I understand why you did it. That won't help you at the tribunal, but I wanted you to know. Thank you, sir. The tribunal was held in a formal military court. 3 judges, all senior officers. The room was full of spectators, soldiers who wanted to see what happened to someone who broke the rules. Tae Sung stood at attention while the charges were read. His defending officer was young and nervous. She tried her best, arguing that Tae Sung had acted in accordance with the medic's oath to preserve life, that he had made a moral choice in an impossible situation. The prosecution argued that feelings and personal morality could not override military discipline, that Tae Sung had endangered himself and violated the chain of command. It wasn't going well. Tae Sung could see it in the judges' faces. They sympathized, maybe. But sympathy didn't change military law. Then something unexpected happened. The courtroom doors opened, and a Krell delegation entered. Vormak led them with 3 other high-ranking Krell warriors, and behind them, on a hover chair specially adapted for his size, was Rexthar. The tribunal chair looked surprised. This is a human military court. Krell observers are permitted, but Vormak spoke in Krell, and the translator converted his words. We request permission to provide testimony relevant to this case. The judges consulted briefly. Then the chair nodded. Permission granted. Rexthar's hover chair moved forward. He positioned himself where he could address the court. His voice was strong, carrying the authority of someone who had commanded warriors in battle. I am Commander Rexthar of the Krell Third War Host. I survived because of the human called Tae Sung, but he did more than keep me alive. During our time in hiding, I gathered intelligence on Vornith movements, patterns, weaknesses, attack cycles. Rexthar activated a display screen. Data scrolled across it. Movement patterns of Vorneth forces, energy signatures, supply routes. Information that any military strategist could see was valuable. This intelligence was gathered over 14 days of observation. The Vorneth did not know we were there, so they did not alter their behavior. This information has already been used to plan counterattacks. 3 supply columns destroyed. 1 manufacturing facility identified and targeted. Estimated enemy forces eliminated. Over 3,000 units. The courtroom was silent. Tae Sung stared at Rexthar in shock. He hadn't known the Krell was gathering intelligence. He'd thought they were just surviving. Rexthar continued. If Tae Sung had not saved me, this intelligence would not exist. Those 3,000 enemy units would still be operational. Human and Krell lives have been saved because of what this human did. He disobeyed orders, yes, but his disobedience had strategic value. Vormak stepped forward. His voice was reluctant but honest. I abandoned my commander because I followed our culture's rules. Tae Sung saved his commander because he followed his conscience. In the end, the human's choice proved more valuable than mine. This brings me shame, but it is truth. The tribunal chair looked at his fellow judges. They whispered among themselves. Finally, he spoke. This court will take a brief recess to consider this new information. They filed out. Tae Sung stood frozen. Rexthar maneuvered his hover chair closer. Breathe, Tae Sung. You look like you're about to fall over. You never told me you were gathering intelligence. You never asked, and you were busy keeping us alive. Rexthar's expression was unreadable. I could not let you face punishment for saving my life. The debt must be repaid. I told you you don't owe me anything, and I told you in Krell culture debts are everything. Rexthar's voice softened. But perhaps I have learned something from humans. Perhaps debt and gratitude are not the same thing. Perhaps I did this not because I owe you, but because I wanted to. Before Tae Sung could respond, the judges returned. Everyone stood at attention. The tribunal chair spoke. Private First Class Tae Sung, this court finds you guilty of disobeying direct orders. However, given the strategic value of your actions and the intelligence gained, your sentence is reduced. 60 days confined to base, demotion in rank suspended pending review. This court also recommends you for a commendation for medical service above and beyond the call of duty. Tae Sung couldn't believe it. He'd expected months in military prison. Dishonorable discharge. Instead, he was getting what amounted to a slap on the wrist. Furthermore, the chair continued, Commander Rexthar has made an unusual request. He wishes to transfer to human command structure, specifically to work with you on developing joint human-Krell medical and tactical operations. This request has been approved by both human and Krell High Command. Do you accept this assignment? Tae Sung looked at Rexthar. The massive alien warrior nodded slightly. Yes, sir, I accept. Then this tribunal is adjourned. Later, outside the courtroom, Tae-sung found Rexithar waiting. "You could have gone back to your people. Why stay with the humans?" "Because you showed me that value is not found only in walking and fighting, that there are different kinds of strength." Rexithar met his eyes. "And because I have found something among humans that Krell rarely find among their own kind, a friend." The word sounded strange in Rexithar's deep voice, but it sounded right. "Yeah," Tae-sung said, smiling. "Friends." 3 weeks after the tribunal, Tae-sung reported to a medical research facility on the human command station. It was located in the science wing, far from the tactical operations center where he'd expected to work. When he entered the main lab, he found Rexthar already there, his hover chair positioned near a holographic display. Standing beside Rexthar was a human woman Tae-sung had never met. She was in her 40s, wearing a white lab coat over military fatigues. Her eyes were intense and focused behind her glasses. "Private Tae-sung reporting as ordered, ma'am." She turned and smiled. "At ease. I'm Dr. Soo-jin, head of Xenobiological Medical Research. And before you ask, yes, I volunteered for this project specifically." "What project, ma'am?" Soo-jin gestured to the holographic display. It showed a detailed scan of Rexthar's spine, with dozens of notes and calculations surrounding it. "We're going to give Commander Rexthar his legs back, or at least new legs, cybernetic ones." Tae-sung stared at the display. "Is that possible? I mean, across species? The neural pathways are completely different." "That's the challenge, yes." Soo-jin pulled up more data. "Krell neurology is more complex than human in some ways, simpler in others. But I think we can build a bridge, a neural interface that translates between Rexthar's nervous system and mechanical limbs. It's never been done before, but theoretically, it should work." Rexthar spoke up. "I have agreed to be the first test subject. If it fails, I will be no worse than I am now. If it succeeds..." He paused. "It will change everything. For Krell warriors who have been abandoned. For those who thought their lives were over." Over the next 3 months, Tae-sung worked alongside Dr. Soo-jin and a team of specialists. His medical knowledge was basic compared to theirs, but he understood Rexthar's condition better than anyone. He'd kept the Krell alive in impossible circumstances. He knew what worked and what didn't. The cybernetic legs were built in stages. First came the neural bridge, a complex piece of technology that would connect to Rexthar's spine above the injury. It would read the signals his brain sent and translate them into commands for mechanical legs. "This is going to hurt," Soo-jin warned Rexthar the day they installed the bridge. "The neural integration process is painful. We can sedate you partially, but you need to be conscious to help us calibrate." "Pain is familiar," Rexthar said. "Begin." Tae-sung stood beside Rexthar during the surgery, holding one of the Krell's upper hands. He'd scrubbed in as a surgical assistant. When the neural bridge was activated for the first time, Rexthar's whole body went rigid. His scales darkened with stress. But he didn't cry out, didn't ask them to stop. "Getting signal," one of the technicians called out. "Neural pathways responding, bridge is holding." The surgery took 8 hours. When it was done, Rexthar had a new device installed in his spine. It looked like a metal collar around his lower back, with fiber optic connections running into his nervous system. It would be the foundation for everything that came next. Recovery took 2 weeks. During that time, Tae-sung visited every day. They played strategy games on a datapad. Rexthar won most of them, but Tae-sung was getting better. They talked about their lives before the war. Rexthar told stories of his mate Kala, how they'd met during combat training, how fierce she was, how much he missed her and their offspring. "Will she accept me with mechanical legs?" Rexthar asked one day. "I think she'll be happy you're alive to see her again." "You do not understand Krell culture. Cybernetics are seen as weakness. A warrior should be whole or should be gone. Then maybe it's time to change the culture. Rexthar made that sound that was half laugh, half cough. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but nothing worth doing is. The day came to attach the cybernetic legs. They were beautiful in their way, sleek metal and synthetic materials designed to match Rexthar's proportions. They were strong enough to support his massive weight and responsive enough to allow natural movement, in theory. Dr. Sujin and her team attached the legs to the neural bridge. Rexthar lay on the medical table, all four arms gripping the sides. Tae-sung stood nearby, monitoring vital signs. "Activating connection," Sujin said. "Commander, try to think about moving your left leg." Rexthar's face concentrated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the left cybernetic leg twitched, just slightly, but it moved. "Signal confirmed," a technician cheered. "Neural bridge is translating correctly." They spent hours calibrating the connection. Small movements at first. A twitch, a bend. Slowly, Rexthar gained more control. By the end of the day, he could move both legs deliberately, not walking yet, but responding to his thoughts. The next 2 weeks were physical therapy. Rexthar had to learn to use the new legs like a child learning to walk. It was frustrating, humiliating for a warrior who had once moved like a storm across battlefields. But he persisted. Tae-sung was there for every session. When Rexthar fell, he helped him up. When Rexthar succeeded in taking 3 steps without support, Tae-sung celebrated like they'd won a battle. Finally, 2 months after the initial surgery, Rexthar stood without assistance. He walked across the medical bay. His gait was slightly mechanical, not quite natural yet. But he walked, on his own, for the first time since the injury. Dr. Sujin had tears in her eyes. It works. It actually works. Rexthar looked at his new legs. He flexed them, testing their strength. Then he looked at Tae-sung. "You saved my life twice, human. Once on the battlefield, once here by refusing to let me give up. You did the hard part. I just stood nearby and looked supportive." News of Rexthar's successful surgery spread quickly. Within days, requests came from Krell Military Command. Other warriors had been injured, paralyzed, abandoned according to tradition. Could they also receive this treatment? The answer was yes. Dr. Sujin began training other surgeons in the procedure. A program was established. Human Krell Medical Cooperation. Warriors who thought their lives were over suddenly had hope. But not everyone was happy about the change. Traditional Krell commanders argued that this violated their culture, that it made warriors dependent on human technology, that it was weakness. Vormak came to visit Rexthar one day. The scarred warrior stood in the medical bay, looking at his former commander's new legs. "They say you have become more human than Krell." "They say many things." Rexthar stood at full height, looking Vormak in the eye. "What do you say?" "I say, I was wrong to leave you." Vormak's voice was heavy. "I followed our traditions. I thought it was the right choice. But our traditions were built for a different time. A time before alliances, before humans showed us a different way. You had a choice then. You have a choice now. Accept the new way or cling to the old." Vormak was silent for a long moment. Then he knelt, all 4 arms extended in a Krell gesture of respect. "I accept, and I ask your forgiveness, Commander." Rexthar placed one hand on Vormak's shoulder. "You are forgiven. Now stand. We have work to do." 4 months after the surgery, Rexthar was cleared for active duty. A special unit was formed. Human Krell Integration Teams. Mixed species squads designed to combine human adaptability with Krell's strength. Tae-sung was promoted to sergeant and assigned as the unit's medical officer. Rexthar became tactical commander. Their first mission was personal. Intelligence had located a Vorneth prison facility holding captured Krell civilians. Among them, possibly, were Rexthar's mate Kala and their offspring. Krell High Command had written them off as lost, too dangerous to attempt rescue. Rexthar disagreed. "We're going in." The assault team consisted of 20 humans and 15 Krell, including several warriors who now walked on cybernetic legs like Rexthar. They hit the prison facility at dawn. The integration training paid off. Humans provided covering fire and tactical coordination. Krell warriors used their strength to breach defenses. They moved like a single organism, each species compensating for the other's weaknesses. Tae Sung stayed with the rescue team, helping evacuate prisoners. The civilians were in bad shape, malnourished, injured, traumatized, but alive. He found Rexthar in the deepest section of the prison. The Krell commander stood before a cell, his new legs steady. Inside were 3 Krell, a female larger than most with scars across her scales, and 2 younger Krell, barely adults, Kala, and their offspring. The cell door opened. Kala stared at Rexthar, her eyes going from his face to his legs. She saw the cybernetics, saw that he was different, changed. "You live," she said in Krell language. "They told us you died with honor." "I lived without honor," Rexthar replied. "A human saved me, gave me new legs, gave me a chance to find you again." Kala stepped forward. She looked at the cybernetic legs closely. Then she looked at her mate's face. "You stand. You fight. You came for us. That is honor enough." She embraced him with all 4 arms. Their offspring joined them. Tae Sung watched from a distance, giving them privacy. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find Dr. Soo Jin there. "Good work, Sergeant. You're the one who built the legs, ma'am. I built the technology. You built the friendship that made him want to walk again. That's not something I can do in a lab." The mission was a complete success. They rescued 200 Krell civilians. Not one member of the assault team was lost. The integration tactics worked perfectly. 5 years passed. The war with the Vorneth was won through cooperation between humans and Krell. The alliance that had begun as convenience became genuine partnership. Cultural exchange programs started, mixed crews on ships, shared bases. Cybernetic prosthetics became common among injured Krell warriors. No longer were they abandoned to die. Instead, they were rebuilt, returned to service, or to their families. The old traditions slowly changed, not through force, but through example. Tae Sung ran a medical research facility now, working on cross-species care for dozens of allied races. His sister Ji Woo had joined him, applying her botanical knowledge to develop new medical treatments from alien plants. Rexthar commanded a joint fleet, his name respected by both humans and Krell. His mate Kala served as a diplomatic liaison, helping other Krell families understand the new ways. Their offspring had grown strong, one becoming a warrior, the other a scientist. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Tae Sung and Rexthar stood together at a memorial. It honored all those lost in the Corinth 9 battle where everything had changed. 5 years, Rexthar said. "You should have left me to die that day." "Yeah, you keep saying that." Tae Sung smiled. It was their ritual now. "And my answer hasn't changed. You humans are stubborn. That's what makes us good allies." Tae Sung looked at his friend. "You ever regret it? Living instead of dying with honor?" Rexthar looked at his cybernetic legs, at the memorial, at the future that stretched before them. "No, because I learned something from you, Tae Sung. Honor is not found in death. It is found in how we live, in who we protect, in the friendships we build across impossible divides. Ji Woo would like you. She always said all life is precious." She was right. Rexthar placed one of his hands on Tae Sung's shoulder. "Your sister is wise, and you, my friend, are the reason I am here to understand that wisdom." They stood together in silence, a human and a Krell, proof that compassion could bridge any difference. That stubbornness in the service of life was not weakness, but strength. That sometimes the most human choice was simply to refuse to give up on someone, no matter how impossible saving them seemed. The sun set over the memorial. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new opportunities to prove that friendship transcended species, culture, and tradition. But tonight, they remembered where it all began. On a battlefield where everyone else had left, where one human medic had looked at a paralyzed alien warrior and said the words that changed everything. "I'm going to help you." And he had. And in doing so, he'd helped them all.